I'm Mike Fisher. This is Richie Witt for CowboysSI.com and for the Fish Report. So you sent me a note saying that we need to do a big, expansive spread. Give me some elbow room video on Cowboys 49ers, and your thesis statement on that was
because we're only two people alive that actually covered the NFC Championship game in 1992-93.
I'm looking around the building here at the Star as we get ready to go to San Francisco, and there's Brad Sham.
Yeah.
And there's Christy Scales.
Yeah. Babe Laufenberg. Yep. But it's thin.
Yeah, it's very thin. It's as thin as our hair is getting to be.
Dang it.
And so, with our combined million of years experience covering the Cowboys and the Cowboys versus the 49ers, we thought we'd bring you some thoughts. There's a misunderstanding. History misunderstands.
A lot of things.
Jimmy Johnson's.
Yep.
How about them Cowboys?
Yep.
Which, by the way, should have a question mark and an exclamation mark at the end of it.
Please.
It is a question and it's an exclamation.
Right.
That's how it should be properly written.
Let's learn to use the apostrophe, if nothing else, because of Jimmy. He taught us one thing. Forget the Super Bowl. When you take out the A in about, it's apostrophe.
How about
you're pointing to the letter you're taking out. It doesn't go towards the B. And I'm talking to you, media outlets. Please, let's get this right.
Okay, and then it's a question and an exclamation.
Yes.
So give it both marks.
Right.
So history thinks that he said that after the Super Bowl.
Right.
And actually, he said it in San Francisco.
Yeah.
When they upset a great
Huge
49ers
upset.
team.
Yeah.
And the reason it was a huge upset, I point out, and you can help us break down the roster a little bit at the
Yeah.
time, they had no idea they were that good.
Exactly. The Cowboys were building, obviously. They already had Troy and Emmett and Aikman, and they were building a talented roster. But the year before, they had won a wild card game.
Yep.
This was the following year, and they thought, let's take the next step, which is winning a home playoff game, which they did. But then going up against Steve Young and Jerry Rice, these were the iconic Hall of Fame 49ers, pretty much in their prime. And the Cowboys, including Jimmy, didn't think they were going to win that game.
Right.
That's why, if he would tell you the truth, which Jimmy never will, how about them Cowboys was kind of like, I can't believe what we just did. Not, how about that, you doubters? It was like, oh my gosh, we really beat the Niners.
Yeah.
That was the vibe behind that iconic statement.
Now, Jimmy, famous, and he wants you to know that he's famous for being a psychologist.
Yeah.
And we will tell you this. You know the story, of course, about why he got a psychology major. Do you remember that one?
No.
Okay, he's at Arkansas.
Yes.
And he's trying to pick a major, and he's playing football. He's going to Arkansas to play football.
Rooming with Jerry.
Yeah, J&J.
Yeah, not by choice.
Road roommates, right. And he looks around to find out which major would not require him to go to class. Which one they didn't take attendance at.
Okay.
They just take a final quiz at the end of the year and get your grade, because he wanted to spend all his time not only playing football, but in the commons area winning at cards.
Yeah.
That's the real story about why Jimmy Genius is a psychologist, and he'll tell you that story.
He was taking an online course before there were computers.
Pretty much. And the next thing you know, obviously, he absolutely does know how to push buttons psychologically.
Of course, he's a master motivator.
So before that game, he goes on the radio with Galloway.
No.
Right? Or do I have my schedule wrong?
You got your schedule wrong.
Okay.
The radio 3-inch headlines, I guarantee it, was before the following year's NFC Championship game
Also
at Texas Stadium.
Also
against the Niners.
Okay.
Yes.
Good. Okay, I need to.
But how about them Cowboys was after the 92 NFC Championship game. 3-inch headlines was they were defending a Super Bowl.
Okay, good. I'm glad you cleared that up. 3-inch headlines did come from a place of confidence.
Oh, absolutely.
By that time,
yes.
they knew how good they were.
They'd already beaten the Niners before. They were playing the game at Texas Stadium. And, Jimmy knew they were going to win the game if there weren't crazy injuries. And remember him and George Seifert, who was the coach of the Niners at the time, went back and forth. Fans now today would love it, because back then coaches weren't so afraid to spar in the media. And they used the media. And Jimmy said 3-inch headlines, and Seifert said, boy, he's got some balls. And Jimmy goes, and they're not paper mache. You'll find out Sunday. And we're like, look, game on. This is amazing.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Now, just fast forward. Can you imagine Kyle Shanahan and Mike McCarthy discussing each other's testicles?
No, but how great was it? That was the days of not only coaching wars, but actual tangible delivered to your doorstep newspaper wars,
Right.
which we were a part of. So that's why we loved it. But
Right.
yeah, it's a much kindler, gentler coaching brotherhood these days in the NFL.
Okay, last year in Dallas, Mike McCarthy, before the first Washington game,
Yep.
said, if we play as well as we can, we're going to win the game.
And yeah.
And that got turned into McCarthy guarantees.
Guaranteed, yeah.
And Ron Rivera got all pissed off, and they went back.
Right.
They went gently back and forth.
Yeah.
And I'm like, guys, and of course they've both been around quite a while. They
yeah.
know. But guys, this is no coaching war. This
Right.
is nothing.
And the Eagles coach Sirianno wears a Dallas Week
Yeah.
T-shirt, and all of a sudden it's like, we hate the Eagles. I'm like, you should see the signs when we went to Veterans Stadium for Eagles games about the signs written with Sharpies on bed sheets. At the
Yeah.
Eagles, it was ruthless back then.
So paper mache
Versus brass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Cowboys established that not only did the coach have the brass,
Right.
but so did the team. The NFC Championship game where they're down 21-0.
Yes.
Now my memory's right on that one, right?
That was when the Cowboys were going for a three-peat.
That was the next year.
Barry Switzer's first year.
Okay.
Yes, at Candlestick.
And it was very, very challenging for a lot of people. Barry Switzer, of course, love him or not, you know how I feel, and I think you feel the same way. As a person,
Absolutely.
he pushed so many right buttons that people aren't aware of
Yeah.
because he wasn't Jimmy. They don't want to be aware of it.
Sure.
And included on that list is friend of the show, Troy Aikman.
Yeah.
Troy Aikman was not in favor of that idea
From the start.
from the start.
Right. Now, he wasn't a Jimmy fan either, Troy.
Right.
He knew Jimmy was good for the team, but he didn't really like Jimmy personally.
Right, and of course that's changed.
Of course.
It's worth noting, by the way, as long as we're going through this,
Yeah.
Deion Sanders was not friendly with everybody on this team
No,
when he
hardly
came
anybody.
here.
No.
Irvin, they were best friends.
Yeah.
Otherwise, like Jimmy and Deion didn't particularly do. I'm sorry, not Jimmy. Jimmy didn't especially do Aikman right.
That's
We'll
right.
just leave it at that.
Yeah.
Okay. And either did Haley when he came here.
Right.
We're at Valley Ranch, and I remember being told that Haley went into a meeting or something and announced in front of everybody Troy Aikman couldn't hold Joe Montana's jock.
I remember hearing that, yeah.
That was his introduction to his new friends.
Well, which was much better than the introduction that Haley gave to me.
Oh, my
for
gosh. Yeah, me too.
But you got to remember, that was in the days, free agency had just started. It was just
Right.
a thing.
Right.
Before that, when you got drafted by the Cowboys or the Niners,
You're a
you
Cowboy.
played for
Yeah.
the Cowboys or the 49ers, and you played them year after year after year. In the offseason, it was us versus them. Now, fan bases hate each other and hate, right?
Right. Love to hate. Yeah.
But players now do not hate each other.
No.
The Cowboys players don't hate the Eagles. They hold hands, they switch jerseys, they pray.
Pray together.
But
Yeah.
back in the early 90s, there was a prayer circle. They actually hated each other. So when Haley and Deion come into the Cowboys fraternity, when we've already won Super Bowls, it's kind of like, what are we doing here?
Right.
This is the enemy trying to take some of our credit, not really appreciating these guys can help us win even more.
Right. To the best parallel I can give for a Cowboy fan is Cowboys versus Washington, and of course you know more about it than I do.
Oh, yeah.
But those, Roger Staubach and Dave Butts.
Darren Talbert, and
Talbert.
Ken Houston. And George Allen actually did not like Tom Landry.
Right.
And would say it. And Tom Landry, of course, good Christian man, would just kind of say, he's a good competitor. But for Landry, that was like fighting words.
Right.
There was genuine hatred between the Redskins and the Cowboys.
Okay, there is a fan base. Is it hatred between the 49ers and Cowboys, or is it jealousy?
I think it's jealousy. Yeah,
I do too.
I think it's who's going to win more Super Bowl, who's got a better history, who's got a better future. It's more football than kind of city versus city or culture versus culture. I just remember sitting at Candlestick Park. And remember before the game, we're talking about the one 30 years ago, the NFC Championship at Candlestick Park. Kind of like there is now, there was outrageous monsoons going on in Northern California.
Yeah.
And there was talk about that game during the week. We might have to move this game because Candlestick was underwater. And they brought in Google the name George Toma.
Yep.
And you'll remember he was the god.
The turf god.
The sod god.
Sod god.
Sod god. To come in and say, is this field playable for an NFC Championship game? And they laid down a whole new turf, but it kept raining. Yeah.